Some people die because life is unfair. These people died because their brain hit airplane mode at the worst possible moment. Tonight is not a list of tragic victims. This is a highlight reel of grown adults looking at electricity, gravity, fire, ice, and basic survival, and deciding to freestyle. One man treated a car theft like a TED Talk and accidentally locked himself inside a rolling toaster. Another looked at a bedsheet and said, "Yeah, that's basically a parachute." Somewhere else, a fully functional adult saw industrial air pressure and thought, "Perfect, this can replace a belt." This is what happens when confidence gets drunk, common sense leaves the building, and physics stops being polite. These people didn't just ignore warning signs. They basically body-slammed logic in a parking lot and told nature, "Square up." So buckle in, because these 10 legends didn't lose to bad luck. They lost to the oldest killer in human history, thinking, "I got this," right before absolutely not having this. Story 1. Klaus tried to steal a car and accidentally invented the dumbest escape room in Europe. Klaus was a small-time car thief from Germany, which means he had just enough confidence to be dangerous and just enough internet access to become a complete moron. He didn't see himself as a criminal, of course. No, in his own head, Klaus was a specialist, a technician, a smooth operator, a discount action movie genius in a cheap jacket. He wasn't stealing a car. He was bypassing automotive security. That's the kind of lie a man tells himself right before the dashboard starts smoking. One cold night, Klaus spotted an older sedan parked on a quiet street. Clean, well kept, probably owned by someone who paid taxes on time and said things like, "Let's not make a scene." To Klaus, it looked perfect. Old enough to mess with, nice enough to sell, easy money. He slipped into the driver's seat like he was entering his office. Now, regular people look under a steering column and see wires. Klaus looked under there and saw destiny. A whole spaghetti bowl of red, brown, yellow, and black cables stared back at him, and somehow his brain translated that into, "Yeah, I basically understand this." Because a few online tutorials will do that to a man. They'll make him watch some guy in fingerless gloves strip 2 wires on camera and suddenly think he's the Elon Musk of felony. So Klaus got to work. He yanked off the plastic panel, reached into the guts of the car, and started feeling around with all the confidence of a man who had never once been humbled enough by electricity. He found a thick red wire, then a brown one that looked important, and decided the moment had come. This was it. This was the scene in the movie where the engine growls to life, the hero grins, and the audience thinks, "Wow, he's good." Klaus touched the wires together. Spark. Then another. Then the engine coughed, shuddered, and roared to life. And for one glorious, stupid little second, Klaus felt like a king. He actually did it. He probably had that smug little face too. That "still got it" face. That "I am him" face. The face every dumb man makes right before the universe punches a hole through his self-esteem. Because the second the car came alive, something else happened. Thunk, click. All the locks engaged, every door, every window. The entire car sealed shut like it had just decided, on its own, that Klaus needed to be kept indoors for the good of society. At first, he was annoyed, not scared. Just a little irritated. Like the car had committed a minor customer service offense. He reached for the handle. Locked. Hit the window switch. Dead. Tried again. Nothing. Then he smelled it. That hot, ugly smell of burnt plastic and fresh consequences. A little ribbon of smoke curled up from under the steering column, thin at first, almost polite, like the car was giving him one final warning before it fully committed to revenge. Klaus had crossed the wrong wires. Yes, he had started the engine, but he had also apparently told the car's electrical system to have a full nervous breakdown. He didn't hotwire the car. He basically gave it a stroke. The dashboard lights flickered, the radio died, the cabin dimmed, and somewhere deep inside the wiring, an electrical fire started chewing its way through the car like a tiny demon with excellent work ethic. Now Klaus panicked, and panic inside a locked vehicle full of toxic smoke is a terrible place for character development. He slammed his shoulder into the door. Nothing. He kicked at the window. Nothing. Smoke began filling the cabin, thick and black, turning his glamorous heist into the world's dumbest sauna. Every breath got worse. Every second got hotter. The car he wanted to steal had become a self-locking, self-smoking, idiot-powered oven. And that is honestly kind of beautiful. Because after all the tutorials, all the swagger, all the "I know what I'm doing" energy, Klaus didn't get beaten by the cops. He got beaten by basic wiring. He tried to hotwire a car, and the car basically said, "No problem, but you're staying." Story 2. Gene forgot his belt and chose the most insane backup plan in human history. Gene worked in a factory in Belgium, which meant his day was already full of noise, metal, pressure, and machines that could absolutely ruin your life before lunch. What shouldn't have been ruining his life was his pants. But from the moment his shift started, Gene was losing an active, humiliating war against gravity and his own waistband. Every few minutes, his work pants would slide south like they were trying to escape the building without him. He'd yank them back up, go back to work, and 30 seconds later they'd be halfway to unemployment again. Now, a smart man in that situation has options. Borrow a belt. Use some rope. Find string. Use zip ties. Hold them up with pure shame. Gene chose none of those. Because somewhere between irritation and absolute brain failure, he looked over at a high-pressure industrial air hose hanging on the wall and thought, "Yeah, that'll do it." That's right. Gene decided the solution to "my pants keep falling down" was compressed air. Not fashion, not logic, not even basic caveman problem solving. Industrial air. And not the cute little garage compressor kind either. This was factory-grade pressure. The kind of hose built to blast grease, metal dust, and regret off heavy equipment. The kind of tool that says, very clearly, "I am not for your body, in any form, ever." Gene, however, was apparently in his innovation era. His genius plan, and I use the word genius the way people use chef's kiss for a raccoon stealing spaghetti, was to pump air into his pants so they'd puff up and stay in place. That was the plan. To turn his trousers into some kind of denim hovercraft, you have to admire the commitment, not the intelligence, just the commitment. So Gene glanced around, made sure no one was watching, and grabbed the hose nozzle like a man about to change the world for people too lazy to wear belts. He jammed it down the front of his pants and used one hand to press the waistband tight against his body, sealing the whole thing up like he was packing a human Lunchable. Right there. That was the moment. That was the final off-ramp, the last exit before Disaster City. Any functioning adult brain should have stepped in and said, "Hey champ, maybe don't connect factory pressure directly to your internal organs over a wardrobe issue." But Gene's brain had apparently clocked out early and left a cardboard cutout in charge. He squeezed the trigger. Now, Gene expected a gentle puff, a little air, a little support, maybe a temporary miracle for working-class fashion. What he got was physics arriving with a folding chair. Because compressed air does not care about your plan. Compressed air only cares about pressure, pathways, and making very bad decisions become medical vocabulary. Instead of politely inflating his pants, the blast went exactly where high-pressure air should never, under any circumstances, be invited to go. And in one horrifying instant, Gene's quick fix became the kind of workplace incident that makes an entire safety department go silent for a full minute. His co-workers turned around just in time to witness the exact moment one man lost an argument with his own waistband so badly it became industrial legend. And that's really the beauty of it. Gene woke up that morning needing one simple thing: a belt. By lunchtime, he had transformed a minor clothing inconvenience into a full-blown cautionary tale for anyone who has ever looked at a dangerous machine and thought, "I bet I can use that wrong." He didn't fix his pants. He just took dress code violation to a level no HR department had ever prepared for. Story 3. Dmitri. Decided the best way to test frozen ice was with a Soviet car and male delusion. Dmitri was standing at the edge of a frozen lake in Russia with his family, a boxy old Lada, and the exact kind of confidence that usually ends with somebody saying, "Well, that sure happened." It was one of those brutal winter days where everything looked beautiful in the way only Russia can make beauty feel threatening. The lake was covered in smooth white ice, stretching out like a giant frozen parking lot designed by Satan. His wife looked at it and saw danger. His kids looked at it and saw danger. Even the air itself seemed to be saying, maybe don't. Dmitri saw an opportunity to be right in front of other people, and that, historically, is where men become deeply stupid. See, the family had been arguing about whether the ice was safe. A normal person would have tested it with a drill, maybe a stick. Maybe, if you're feeling dramatic, a heavy rock. But Dmitri was not interested in normal person methods. He wanted certainty. He wanted proof. He wanted to settle the matter in the most divorced dad science fair way possible. So he pointed at his Lada and announced, with the swagger of a man whose brain had confused stubbornness with engineering, "If the ice can hold the car, it can hold anything." That sentence should be framed and hung in a museum called Famous Last Thoughts by Men Who Hate Being Wrong. Now, let's take a moment to appreciate the Lada. A Lada is not just a car. It's a Soviet rectangle with windows. It looks like someone built a toaster oven big enough to carry groceries and regret. It was never meant to be a scientific instrument, but Dmitri was about to use it like a four-wheeled lie detector for frozen water. His family begged him not to do it, which, to a man like Dmitri, only made the stunt more important. Because once a certain kind of guy has an audience and a bad idea, the bad idea immediately gets upgraded to a personal mission. So Dmitri climbed in, started the engine, and slowly rolled the Lada onto the ice. And for about 10 seconds, he looked like a genius. The ice held. The car crept forward. He probably had that little smug face too. That interesting, almost like I knew what I was talking about face. You could practically hear the imaginary speech he was giving inside his own head. But frozen lakes are funny like that. They don't really care about your speech. They don't care about your pride, your family dynamics, or your weird need to turn every disagreement into a Russian episode of Mythbusters' final season. Dmitri got maybe 50 feet out when the lake decided it had heard enough. It didn't start with a cute little crack. No, it started with a deep, ugly boom. The kind of sound that makes your soul sit up straight and say, oh, we're in the consequences part now. Then the ice split, fast. Jagged cracks shot out under the car like the lake was signing its own rebuttal in capital letters. The front end dipped. The nose of the Lada punched straight through the surface. And in one beautiful, catastrophic moment, Dmitri's bold scientific demonstration became a live-action answer key. The car lurched forward and down into the freezing black water. Doors jammed, frame twisted. Everything got very quiet in the exact wrong way. And that's the magic of this story. Dmitri wanted evidence. He wanted one clear, undeniable result. He wanted to prove that everyone else was nervous for no reason, and that he, a man with a car and a bad attitude, had correctly judged a frozen lake. And to its credit, the lake gave him exactly what he asked for, a very clear answer. It was just spelled in cracking ice, sinking metal, and the final official statement from nature that says, "Your test has been reviewed. You are not smarter than water." Story 4. Randy spilled gasoline in his garage and solved it the dumbest way imaginable. Randy was the kind of suburban genius who believed every household problem could be solved with one of three things: more horsepower, more noise, or standing there with both hands on his hips like the solution might arrive out of respect. He lived in a perfectly normal American neighborhood where every garage contained the same sacred objects: a half-broken ladder, 17 mystery screws, Christmas decorations in a plastic bin from 2009, and at least one machine powerful enough to turn a small mistake into local news. On this particular Saturday, Randy was doing what millions of men do when they have free time, a garage, and no supervision: messing with gasoline like it had never betrayed anyone before. He was trying to refill a mower, missed like an idiot, and dumped a shiny puddle of gas all over the concrete floor. Now, a regular adult sees that and thinks, okay, open the garage, grab some rags, clean it up. Maybe don't die today. But Randy was not operating from regular adult headquarters. Randy was operating from the part of the male brain that sees a dangerous liquid and immediately starts looking around for louder equipment. That's when his eyes landed on the leaf blower. And the second he saw it, you could almost hear the last surviving brain cell in his skull pack a suitcase and leave. Because to Randy, the plan made perfect sense. Why wipe up gasoline like some kind of coward when you could just blow it away? That was his big innovation. Not remove the fuel, not absorb the fuel, just aggressively redistribute it with a machine whose entire personality is angry wind and suspicious heat. So Randy fired up the leaf blower. And if you've never heard a bad idea become active, it sounds exactly like that engine starting. The machine roared to life. Randy gripped it like he was about to save America. Then he aimed the nozzle at the puddle and squeezed the trigger. Immediately, the gas spread everywhere. Not less dangerous, wider. It misted across the floor in a fine shimmering spray, turning his garage from annoying spill into uninsured science experiment. The fumes rose fast, thick and invisible, filling the room with a nice explosive atmosphere for anyone interested in reenacting the final moments of common sense. And Randy, naturally, took this as progress, because nothing looks more successful to a dumb man than a mess moving quickly. He kept blasting away, sending gasoline under shelves, toward the mower, past power tools, and around the base of the water heater like he was seasoning the garage for a future fire investigator. Now this is where chemistry enters the chat. Gasoline vapors are not hard to ignite. They do not require a flamethrower, a lightning strike, or a villain speech. They just need one tiny spark, one hot surface, one microscopic moment where physics decides it has tolerated enough male confidence for the day. And Randy had helpfully brought a running motor into a vapor-filled garage. That was the whole move. That was his contribution to modern engineering. So when the fumes finally found ignition, the garage didn't so much catch fire as take it personally. The blast hit all at once. A deep whump shook the walls. Tools launched. The garage door buckled outward. A plastic storage bin of Christmas ornaments achieved liftoff like Santa had finally had enough. Neighbors later said the sound was somewhere between an explosion and a lawn care appliance trying to escape Earth's atmosphere. And right at the center of it all was Randy, a man who looked at spilled gasoline and decided the missing ingredient was more airflow. He didn't clean the garage. He just turned it into a brief educational program titled, "Why the Fire Department Hates Improvising Men in Cargo Shorts." Story 5. Hendrik looked at a bedsheet and said, "Yeah, that's basically a parachute." Hendrik had just turned 50, which for most people means maybe a nice dinner, a cake, and one emotionally confusing Facebook post about how fast life goes. For Hendrik, it meant this: jumping off a 15-story apartment building with a homemade parachute made out of a bedsheet. Because apparently, midlife crisis wasn't strong enough. He wanted mid-air crisis. Now, Hendrik was a DIY guy, and I don't mean the charming kind who builds a birdhouse and accidentally glues 2 fingers together. I mean the dangerous kind. The kind of man who sees professionals, training, tested equipment, and decades of engineering, and takes it personally. In his mind, paying for a real skydive was for suckers. Taking lessons was for cowards. Buying a certified parachute was just big fabric trying to keep the little guy down. He believed in homemade solutions, and unfortunately, homemade solutions believed in him. So for his birthday, Hendrik announced to friends and family that he would be performing a base jump from the roof of his apartment building using a parachute of his own design. Already, this should have been enough information for somebody to tackle him into a bush, but instead, people did what crowds always do when a grown man says something unbelievably stupid with enough confidence. They showed up to watch. And what a design it was! His parachute consisted of one large bedsheet with ropes tied to the corners, all connected to a harness he had cobbled together from old leather belts. That was it. No canopy design, no venting system, no shape, no ripstop nylon, no pilot chute, no backup. Just bedroom linen and the kind of confidence usually found in men explaining crypto at a barbecue. To Hendrik, though, the logic was bulletproof. A parachute is cloth. A bedsheet is cloth. Case closed. That's like saying a submarine and a lunchbox are basically the same thing because both can technically hold stuff. But Hendrik had moved beyond logic. He was in that special zone where a man stops asking whether something works and starts asking whether people are brave enough to believe in him. So up to the roof he went. A little crowd gathered below in the parking lot, staring up at this man standing on top of a building with what looked like a laundry accident tied to his back. And there he was, loving every second of it, waving, grinning, soaking up the attention like he was about to become a legend instead of a cautionary tale for anyone who's ever looked at betting and thought, aviation. He looked down at the crowd like some kind of discount superhero. You can practically picture the pose. Chest out, chin up, sheet flapping behind him, absolutely radiating the energy of a man who had mistaken theatricality for lift. Then, he took a running start and jumped. Now, to be fair, the bedsheet did deploy. Technically. It just didn't do anything useful, because a bedsheet is not a parachute. It doesn't trap air correctly. It doesn't form a stable canopy. It doesn't create the drag needed to turn falling into descending. It just flaps around behind you like your bedroom is trying to leave the relationship. And that's exactly what it did. Instead of blossoming into a life-saving canopy, the sheet snapped and fluttered uselessly in the wind, offering roughly the same aerodynamic support as a disappointed napkin. For one horrible second, Hendrik probably realized the truth. He had not built flight equipment. He had just jumped off a building wearing laundry. That's it. That was the invention. He didn't outsmart gravity. He didn't reinvent skydiving. He just turned a fitted sheet set into a final bad decision. And honestly, that's what makes this story so special. Hendrik looked at one of the most carefully engineered safety devices in human history, then looked at household bedding and said, same genre. No training, no backup plan, no respect for physics, just pure, unfiltered birthday confidence. He wanted to celebrate turning 50 by proving age is just a number. Instead, he proved something much more important. The linen aisle is not where aviation begins. Story 6. Alex tried to book a private appointment with lightning and got confirmed immediately. Alex was not a normal storm chaser. Normal storm chasers see a giant electrical death cloud rolling across the plains and think, let's get some footage from a safe distance and avoid becoming a cautionary weather graphic. Alex thought that was coward talk. He didn't just want to photograph lightning. He wanted a relationship with it, an artistic connection, a once-in-a-lifetime masterpiece. He wasn't satisfied waiting for a strike to happen somewhere cool in the distance like a regular photographer with basic self-preservation. No. Alex wanted to get so close to lightning that the photo would practically smell like poor judgment. And after years of chasing storms, his brain had slowly evolved, or, more accurately, de-evolved, into the most dangerous kind of mindset on Earth. I think I can control this. That sentence has ended more stories than bad breaks. Alex had spent months building what he believed would change storm photography forever. A giant custom metal tripod topped with a lightning rod, 20 feet tall, collapsible, heavy-duty, scientific-looking enough to make bad decisions feel premium. His theory was beautifully stupid. He would set up the rod in an open field during a severe thunderstorm, let the lightning hit his tower, and capture the perfect close-range image with remote cameras. Now, to a person with common sense, that plan sounds less like photography and more like politely asking heaven to uppercut you. But Alex had crossed the line where obsession starts dressing up as innovation. In his head, he wasn't reckless, he was pioneering. That is the exact vibe men get right before weather starts writing their obituary. So when a nasty supercell rolled over eastern Colorado, Alex knew this was his moment. The sky looked incredible. Black clouds, purple flashes, thunder that sounded like God moving furniture. The whole atmosphere was screaming absolutely not, which to Alex sounded like applause. He drove out to a wide-open hilltop with no trees, no cover, and no good excuses. Basically the perfect place to become the tallest dumb idea for miles. He unloaded the gear, set up the giant metal tower, positioned the cameras, checked the framing, and then, because the universe loves an overachiever, the storm started getting even worse. Lightning cracked across the sky again and again. The air was buzzing. The ground was wet. The metal tower stood in the middle of the field like a giant silver RSVP to disaster. All Alex had to do now, if he had any surviving relationship with sanity, was retreat to the truck and trigger the cameras remotely. He did not do that. because apparently remote is just a fun word you can ignore when you're determined to become the stupidest part of a thunderstorm. Instead, Alex stayed right there, about 10 feet from the lightning rod. 10 feet. That's not safely nearby, that's basically in the group project. He wanted to watch it happen. He wanted to feel the power. He wanted the full artistic moment. And lightning, to its credit, said, "Absolutely, let's collaborate." The strike came down fast and hard. A giant blinding bolt slamming directly into the top of the metal tower, with a crack so violent it probably reset every bad decision he'd ever made. The rod worked perfectly. His invention did exactly what it was built to do. Which is hilarious, because his plan failed only after succeeding. Alex had focused so hard on getting the bolt to hit the tower that he forgot electricity doesn't just vanish after the big dramatic part. It spreads. It moves. It looks for shortcuts. And with wet ground, charged soil, and one overconfident man standing 10 feet away, it found a very convenient route. Straight through him. That's the part I can't get over. He built a machine to attract lightning, then stood next to it like he had backstage passes. He wasn't struck because the device failed. He was struck because the device worked like a dream. The cameras later captured everything. The storm, the tower, the masterpiece. The exact second art and stupidity held hands and skipped directly into physics. Alex wanted the perfect lightning photo, and technically, he got it. Which is a brutal reminder that nature is always willing to help with your vision, as long as you're okay being the funniest part of the frame. Story 7. Earl turned a lawnmower into a race car. Because mowing the lawn normally was apparently for cowards. Earl lived in the kind of neighborhood where every garage smelled like gasoline, every fridge in the corner held exactly 12 mystery beers, and every third man believed he was one bad idea away from changing motorsports forever. Earl was that third man. To him, a riding lawnmower was not a tool. It was an insult, a mechanical disappointment, a machine with no ambition. Every time he mowed the yard at its normal speed, which is to say, the speed of a tired turtle thinking about retirement, Earl felt personally disrespected, because Earl did not want to maintain a lawn. He wanted to dominate one. He wanted to slice through suburban grass with the energy of a NASCAR driver fleeing child support. He wanted the neighbors to hear an engine scream and say, "Good Lord, Earl is cutting the lawn again." So when one of his friends, already several beers deep, joked, "You ought to put nitrous on that thing," the room laughed. Everybody laughed. Except Earl. Because the moment a stupid man hears a joke he can technically attempt, it stops being a joke and becomes a mission from God. Now, nitrous oxide belongs on race cars, drag strips, and in movies where people shift gears like they're swatting bees. It does not belong on a riding mower whose main job is helping a divorced man avoid talking to his family for 45 minutes on a Saturday. But Earl had already committed emotionally. For the next few days, his garage turned into the kind of engineering lab that makes actual engineers leave the room without speaking. He watched a few videos online, ignored every part involving safety, and focused only on the fun parts: fuel, speed, noise, and men saying things like, "This baby's gonna fly." That last phrase turned out to be more accurate than anyone wanted. He bolted a nitrous kit onto the mower with the kind of confidence usually seen in men assembling trampolines after sunset. He removed what he described as all that unnecessary safety junk, which is a sentence that should immediately summon paramedics through a legal loophole. He reinforced nothing, tested nothing, and absolutely did not pause to ask whether a lawnmower designed for grass should be chemically encouraged to pursue violence. By Saturday afternoon, the beast was ready, or at least assembled enough to be dangerous. His buddies came over with cheap beer and folding chairs, because of course they did. Men will turn any bad decision into a spectator sport if there's enough sunlight and poor judgment involved. Someone started filming, because friendship, in these situations, is mostly just evidence collection. Earl climbed onto the mower, shirtless, naturally, because no American man has ever done something this stupid while fully dressed. He revved the engine, looked around at the crowd like he was about to qualify for Daytona, and yelled, "Y'all ready to see real horsepower?" No, Earl. They were about to see lawn horsepower. He took off across the backyard fast enough to already make the whole thing disgusting. The mower bounced over ruts, fishtailed across the grass, and immediately started sounding like a weed whacker possessed by Satan. But for one glorious second, Earl looked unstoppable. Wind in his face, belly out, eyes watering, riding a landscaping appliance like it owed him money. Then he hit the nitrous. And that's when the mower stopped being transportation and became a divorce from reality. The front end lifted, the back tires spun, the whole machine lurched sideways, clipped a tree root, and launched into the air with the confused anger of an object that had never consented to this lifestyle. Earl got thrown off like the mower had finally decided to defend itself. The machine cartwheeled through a flower bed, exploded through a cheap plastic fence, and died upside down in a kiddie pool like the world's dumbest war machine. Earl wanted to mow faster. What he actually built was a mechanical argument against free weekends, male confidence, and whatever part of the Constitution accidentally lets men buy tools without supervision. Story 8. Kyle tried to propose with indoor fireworks and accidentally put his relationship on expert mode. Kyle was the kind of man who thought romance needed more horsepower, not emotion, not timing, not sincerity. No, Kyle believed love was only real if it came with smoke, sparks, and at least one decision that would later confuse an insurance adjuster. He was planning to propose to his girlfriend Ashley, and in his head, this wasn't just a proposal. This was an event, a spectacle, a cultural moment. He didn't want her telling friends, "He asked me to marry him over dinner." He wanted her saying, "I blacked out for a second because the ceiling caught fire." That was the vision. Now, a normal man would have gone with candles, maybe flowers, maybe a nice rooftop dinner if he was feeling fancy and had access to a collared shirt that still fit. But Kyle was not interested in normal man solutions. He wanted cinematic impact. He wanted her to walk into the living room and feel like she had just entered the final scene of a movie directed by a man who definitely has unpaid speeding tickets. So he came up with the idea of indoor fireworks. And the fact that those two words even made it through his brain without getting arrested is honestly impressive. Kyle didn't see a problem. He saw a shortcut to greatness. Why go outside where fireworks belong when you can bring that same explosive joy directly into a room full of curtains, furniture, fabric, wood, and oxygen? That's not romance. That's a very confident hate crime against drywall. For 2 days, Kyle transformed his living room into what can only be described as if Pinterest married a gas leak. Rose petals everywhere, candles on shelves, decorative lights wrapped around furniture, music queued up, ring box hidden, and tucked strategically around the room, because this man was absolutely committed to the bit, several small celebration fireworks he had rigged to ignite remotely at the exact moment he got down on one knee. Near the curtains, near the couch, near the rug, near literally every item firefighters later refer to as fuel. At no point did Kyle stop and think, maybe I should not fill my enclosed living space with tiny explosive enthusiasm devices. Because once a man starts describing something as epic, safety leaves the group chat. The big night arrived. Ashley came home expecting a normal evening. Instead, she opened the door and found the living room glowing like Cupid had been given access to a nightclub and one felony. Candles flickered. Music swelled. Kyle stood there in a blazer he'd clearly bought for this exact emergency, looking like a man who fully expected his life to split into before the proposal and after she says yes. Technically, it did, just not how he pictured. Kyle took her hand, gave a speech, got emotional, dropped to one knee. Ashley covered her mouth. The moment was actually working. For one beautiful second, against all odds, the dumbest man in the county had almost pulled off something sweet. Then he hit the remote. The fireworks ignited instantly, not gracefully, not romantically, not in some magical little fountain of sparkle. No. They went off like the living room had suddenly developed combat trauma. One shot hit the ceiling. Another screamed sideways into the wall. A third ricocheted directly into the curtain, which burst into flame with the enthusiasm of a thing that had been waiting all week to ruin a marriage before it started. Ashley screamed. Kyle jumped up. One candle fell over. Smoke poured upward. The room filled with sparks, panic, and the sound of one man realizing too late that he had confused proposal energy with active disaster scene. The smoke alarm kicked in immediately, which made it the smartest thing in the house. Neighbors heard the yelling. Somebody called 911. Kyle, now covered in soot and shame, was frantically trying to stomp out romance with dress shoes while clutching a ring box like that was still somehow relevant. By the time firefighters arrived, the proposal had fully transitioned from special moment to formal statement for the insurance company. And that's what makes this story art. Kyle wanted to create a night Ashley would never forget. Mission accomplished. He didn't propose with fireworks. He just asked the most important question of his life in the middle of a self-inflicted indoor emergency, which is a bold reminder that love may be blind, but apparently it can also smell smoke. Story 9. Doug saw a wasp nest and decided the correct response was homemade napalm. Doug was the kind of guy who treated every minor household problem like the opening scene of an action movie. Leaky faucet? Personal challenge. Weird noise in the attic? Time to investigate. Wasp nest under the roofline? Apparently, a chance to become the dumbest soldier in a war no one asked him to fight. Now, a regular adult confronted with a fat, angry wasp nest hanging off the side of the house has several normal options. Call pest control. Buy proper spray. Wait until night. Wear protective gear. Stay calm. Respect the fact that flying insects with built-in knives should maybe not be handled like a side quest between burgers. Doug chose none of those. Because Doug had what I like to call garage confidence. That special American condition where a man owns 2 tools, 3 fuel containers, and one belief that every trained professional is secretly overcomplicating things. So when his wife pointed out the nest and said, "We should call someone," Doug heard only one thing: "They don't think I can do this." And once a certain kind of man feels spiritually challenged in front of siding, ladders, or insects, the story is basically already over. Doug marched into the garage and started assembling what he clearly believed was going to be remembered as genius. An aerosol can, a lighter, a stepladder. In other words, the exact starter kit for a neighborhood Facebook post that begins with, "Does anyone know what happened on Maple Street?" His plan was breathtakingly stupid in its simplicity. He would climb up there, light the spray, and use the flame to torch the nest in one dramatic masculine sweep. No chemicals, no waiting, no experts. Just him, a can of highly flammable propellant, and the kind of tactical imagination normally seen in 12-year-olds and convicted arsonists. Now, for people who didn't get their engineering degree from a backyard beer cooler, aerosol plus flame does not equal clever shortcut. It equals DIY flamethrower, which is less a home improvement tool and more a sentence you hear right before insurance adjusts your premium with tears in their eyes. But Doug was locked in. He set up the ladder under the eaves, climbed up in cargo shorts and old sneakers, and aimed the can at the nest like he was about to liberate the suburbs. His wife yelled from below that this was a terrible idea. He waved her off with that classic husband gesture that says, "Relax, I've already committed too hard to back out without losing fake points." Then he flicked the lighter. And suddenly, Doug was holding fire. For one insane little second, it probably felt amazing. The flame roared out. The nest lit up. Tiny shadows scattered. Doug likely felt like a warrior poet, a blue-collar dragon, the patron saint of making simple things catastrophically worse. Then reality did what reality always does. First, the flame hit more than the nest, because houses, it turns out, are attached to other parts of the house. Dry wood, paint, leaves in the gutter, the nice old trim his wife had asked him not to mess with 6 separate times. Fire does not care about your target accuracy. Fire just sees a buffet. Second, the wasps were not politely waiting to be removed from the premises. They came out furious. Not confused, not scared, furious. So now Doug was on a ladder, one hand holding a live flamethrower, the other swatting at a cloud of airborne rage with stingers, while the side of his house started participating in the emergency. He lost his balance, flailed, overcorrected, and went down in that special full-body panic dance men do when they realize they have combined insects, gravity, and open flame into one synchronized disaster. The ladder kicked out, Doug fell, the can flew, the flame went wild. Neighbors later described the whole scene as looking like a man had declared war on his own roof and immediately started losing on all fronts. And honestly, that's exactly what happened. Doug saw a wasp nest and decided not to call pest control, not to use proper spray, not to act like a mammal with a functioning frontal lobe. He brought a homemade flamethrower to an insect problem, which is a beautiful reminder that some men don't just escalate. They escalate like they're trying to impress History Channel producers and terrify the fire department at the same time. Story 10. Trevor climbed a water tower for better Wi-Fi and accidentally logged out of reality. Trevor was the kind of guy who treated weak internet like a human rights violation, not an inconvenience, not a small modern annoyance, a betrayal. If a video buffered, Trevor took it personally. If a file upload stalled at 82%, he reacted like the government had put him on a watch list for emotional damage. He lived in a small town where the signal was spotty, the Wi-Fi was weak, and the local internet provider had the customer service energy of a raccoon trapped in a vending machine. For most people, that meant patience. For Trevor, that meant war. One night, a little past midnight, Trevor was trying to upload a giant video file for what he called a content opportunity, which in Trevor's case usually meant some shirtless nonsense involving tools, bad lighting, and a title with way too many capital letters. The upload bar kept freezing. 1 bar, then none, then 1 bar again. The laptop sat there mocking him like a tiny glowing enemy. A normal adult would have closed the computer, gone to bed, and tried again in the morning. Trevor looked out the window, saw the town's old water tower in the distance, and had the kind of thought that only appears when your brain has confused determination with being profoundly unsupervised. Higher means better signal. Now, technically, that's not completely wrong. Elevation can help. But there's a pretty major gap between move closer to a window and free climb public infrastructure in the middle of the night with a backpack full of electronics like a Wi-Fi goblin. Trevor did not respect that gap. He threw on sneakers, grabbed his laptop, stuffed the charger and hotspot into a backpack, and headed out the door with the posture of a man who truly believed he was about to outsmart telecommunications with cardio. When he reached the water tower, he stared up at the metal ladder bolted to the side and saw not a lawsuit-shaped mistake, but a beautiful vertical solution. So up he went, higher and higher into the dark. One hand on the ladder, one hand on the backpack. Wind getting colder, ground getting farther. Every sane instinct in a normal body should have kicked in around the point where the parking lot started looking like a board game. But Trevor wasn't climbing with fear. He was climbing with upload percentage. That is not a survival skill. At the top, he hauled himself onto the narrow platform, dropped to one knee like he was planting a flag on the moon, and opened the laptop. Then it happened. Full bars. Beautiful, stupid, glorious full bars. Trevor smiled the smile of a man who thought he had just defeated the entire internet industry with pure, hillbilly problem solving. He opened the file, hit upload, and watched the progress bar finally start moving. After all that rage, all that stubbornness, all that midnight climbing, it was working. And that is exactly when the universe decided it had let this go on long enough. A hard gust of wind ripped across the platform. The laptop shifted. Trevor lunged for it. Now, this is important. There are moments in life when you have to choose between saving the device and saving yourself. Functional adults usually make that choice very quickly. Trevor was not a functional adult in that moment. He chose the laptop, which is a fascinating decision to make while standing on a narrow metal platform above the ground at midnight like some kind of broadband gargoyle. He reached. His foot slipped. His balance vanished. And in one brutally efficient second, Trevor discovered the final flaw in his signal improvement strategy. Gravity has full coverage everywhere. He wanted stronger Wi-Fi. He got a completed upload, one brief moment of digital victory, and a permanent disconnection from literally everything else. Which is honestly the most 21st century ending imaginable. The man climbed a water tower in the dark to beat bad internet, and ended up proving the one connection he really should have kept was to common sense. So tonight we watched a car thief turn a sedan into a locked, smoke-flavored panic chamber, a factory worker wage full-scale war on his own pants, a Russian dad use a Lada as a scientific instrument for frozen denial, And one suburban genius treat spilled gasoline like it just needed more wind. Then we got a man who looked at a bedsheet and saw aviation, a storm chaser who basically scheduled a private meeting with lightning, a lawnmower that got emotionally upgraded into a race car, a proposal that turned into a home insurance side quest, a guy who fought wasps with homemade napalm, and one Wi-Fi pilgrim who climbed a water tower like the signal was waiting at the top with a crown. 10 stories, 10 grown adults, and one shared belief: I got this. They did not, in fact, have this. Now, I need to know who tonight's undisputed heavyweight champion of stupidity was.
Was it Klaus, who got reverse kidnapped by the car he was trying to steal?
Jean, who saw industrial air pressure and thought, that's basically a belt? Hendrik, who looked at a bedsheet and declared war on aerodynamics? Or Trevor, who literally climbed a water tower because his upload bar hurt his feelings? Drop your top 3 dumbest legends in the comments and defend your ranking like your GPA depends on it. And while you're down there, tell me the dumbest thing you almost did before your last surviving brain cell tackled you to the ground and saved your whole future. The scariest part about these stories isn't that these people were cursed. It's that almost every disaster on this list started with the exact same little sentence that has ruined more lives than bad breaks, cheap tequila, and group chats combined. Bro, watch this. That's all it takes. One bad idea. One little ego boost. One adult man deciding physics is just a negative mindset. So the next time you feel tempted to freestyle against fire, gravity, electricity, weather, insects, vehicles, or household linens pretending to be aerospace equipment, maybe don't. Because common sense may not be sexy. It may not go viral. It may not make your friends yell, "Let's go!" But it does have one incredible feature. It keeps you from ending up in a story narrated by someone like me.